So this is started. Nope, I got it too fast. Anyway, we're at Nunpub, and this is Lessons Learned with me. I'm Carla, and there's Julie. So, Julie, talk about you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Julie Ahern. I work for Van Ryder Games. Before that, I was working at Greenbrier Games. And so I've been a publisher for a while now, over a decade. And in that time, I've designed, and even before that, I designed educational games when I was a teacher. And I've worked at two companies doing a lot of more horror themed stuff. My biggest commercial successes, Tales of Barbaria was in Barnes and Noble the last couple of years, and then I've worked on Final Girl at Van Ryder, and actually, if also in Barnes and Nobles, and you can find mine, which is the Once Upon a Full Moon, that is Red Riding Hood and Gretel as the final girl themed against the Big Bad Wolf. So that's what I've done design wise and where I've published. What about you, Carla? Tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a designer, developer, publisher. I've run Weird Draft Games for like 8 years now, so almost a decade. But not quite there yet. I make a lot of games that involve either birds or fire because I kind of went off the deep end after the pandemic, but that's okay. It's good to know yourself and what you're doing, so that's where I am right there. Um, I used to do like live shows and stuff. And really, I just focus on making games that are like inclusive, maybe focus on mental health or uh, I don't know. Oh, accessibility. I care about that. Why is it so hard to remember the things I care about? Who knows? That's what this panel is going to be like today. But yeah, I make games that are
Happy
weird.
Friday night to everybody out there who's joining us.
Yeah, it's good that this is like the first panel other than the welcome one, if that counts. It probably does. We'll see. Anyway, we are here to talk about the lessons we've learned over the past decade because, we've been doing things and learning lessons about things. Do you want to start off with some design lessons, Julie?
Yes. So, design lessons. Knowing yourself is a great thing for design, and what I've learned over the years is that, let's see, the first one for me is that I work best as a team. I like working with a partner when I'm designing things, or um, like either one other person or two other people is where I am happiest, and I'm happiest there because uh, I don't like throwing ideas into a vacuum. I I like having the sounding board. I like feeding off of other people's energy. Finding people that I work well with is also important. It can't just be in any other designer, but I do work better as a team. And I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of other very talented people. So that has been really good for me. Um, and then the other thing, I think, broad scope for me was um, when I first started designing games, you know, Zpocalypse was our first game back in 2011. Um, Held on to like, and it wasn't. I was still, you know, we would play test things and things would be bad and we'd let it go, but we still held on to a lot of things that were just important to us um, because we had an idea in our heads of what was going to be good and we'd play test it and it wasn't what was in our heads, but we'd still hold on to that idea and not let it go. Not be like, well, that wasn't, it didn't evoke what I thought it was going to. It didn't bring about the fun or the results I wanted it to have. So I'm going to force it to fit into this mold because it was in my head. When I learned to let go of that and really follow the reaction of playtesters and the reaction of what when it was given life, on a table and follow what actually felt like what I initially thought it was going to be, as opposed to what in my head it was going to be. That the concepts of failing faster actually took effect, and that at this point I can iterate very quickly because I'm not precious about anything when I design it. And to that end, I've also learned about myself that I don't need to be the main, like I've ended up doing a lot more development work and project management over the years because I don't need to take lead in the design front. I don't have um, any level of hubris, which I still want things to be good, but I don't need it to be about having my stamp. That being said, I've also, which sounds strange side by side, is I've advocated more and more for making sure that I do get the credit of the work I do. Which when I first started, I was like, I'm just happy to be here. And over the years, I've learned to not be like, no, no, I did that work. I deserve that credit. So while no, I don't have a lot of hubris, when I do work, I also make sure that I get credit. So there's a weird two-part thing to that. What do you think about Carla? What have you learned?
I mean, all that was really great, and yeah, like especially, I've also learned about the teams thing, where as I started, I was just designing alone and doing my own thing. But as you said, like working with somebody else, having the extra voices there is amazing. Um, the thing I've been learning in like the last couple years, like first, I learned that like people are great to work with, and then I was like, oh, how exactly do you work with them? Because my first instinct is, well, I'm a very intense person, so I can like actually like just take over, even though I invite people to work with me, and we initially start off good, like I get too intense. So I have to like learn to step back and make sure to ask a ton of questions so that their voice feels like it's still heard. And then at the other point, I learned the opposite of that, where I just took too many orders from other people because I wanted them to be like involved. So you have to do like both things, where you have to give them space to like say their part, but also be like, oh, okay, well, this is the part I like, or this is where I want to go with it, and be very open to communication and making sure it's still like the game is still a product of both the voices or all three voices. Like you're working with people so that
And that's
everyone
why,
has a
like,
part.
having a partner who gets that and has the good give and take is it's like gold. It's so precious to have somebody who can read when you have a thing and you have to follow it, but also then have their moments and advocate for when they're like, hey friend with the good ideas, my turn to step up a little, like, and have that kind of like that's huge when you can find somebody who can do that and not. And I'm also a lot. I'm not always for everybody. So, to find somebody who gets that and is a good fit with that, with your extraness is always amazing. And I understand why there are a lot of designers who don't want to work with a teammate because when you have a vision, it's really hard sometimes. But also for me, I know I need that pushback. My end results are so much better when I actually have somebody pushing back and questioning when I do stuff.
Well, and just the motivation, like when I'm doing a
Yeah.
project for myself, like I might just set it to the side and leave it for like a month, but if somebody else is there and wants to like hear about it in a week or something, I'll be like, oh yeah, I will update this right now, because I always update things for other people first, and that's just, I guess, part of my personality. um so it's like so much motivation to actually finish the thing instead of like starting five other of my like projects that I want to work on, and like
Because they're
then I'll
all new and shiny.
yeah. So like having that little extra motivation, like, oh, okay, I'm working with this with another person and they are also excited about it, like it will actually make sure that the project gets done. Um, but like, well, as you were saying, like the whole thing is gold if it like actually jams like that. Um, Also learning to like get to that point, because like it doesn't happen automatically with everyone, and just like being open about like, hey, I'm Carla and I'm very intense, and if I ever get to be too intense, just let me know and I can tone it down, but like my excitement is like this. And like just like going back to the whole like knowing yourself and who you are will make you much better at game design, because then like you'll be able to work with other people and like you'll know all these things. And it won't be like a giant surprise when they're like, oh yeah, maybe like let me get in some ideas and stuff, and like the learning to listen, just like you're learning to listen for playtesting and things like that.
There was very quickly a comment that came and went for the
Okay, I'll
briefest
let
of
you think on
moments.
it. Another thing that Julie said was,
My ideal
okay.
co-designer is a friend to hit me with a cartoonish mallet every time I go off the rails with a project.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
exactly. Because I go off the rails a lot. But like having somebody to rein you in and be like, "Hey, Carla, that's a lot of math. Like, what if it was just simple, like simple math?" Like, I remember one game I was co-designing where I got like so excited about something, and I literally made a full page of all this math. And my co-designer Charlie was like, "Okay, that's so cool, Carla. You got really excited about that. What if we flipped over the paper and didn't do any of that?"
What if we pretended none of that existed?
And the game was so
Which is fine.
better for it. Yeah, you could have your great ideas, and they're great. Maybe they're for something else, maybe for this, but like, listen to your co-designer, and they'll probably rein you in and make you like not make a calculus-based game because like, who wants that? Who?
I'm fascinated. I want to see the paper now.
I mean, it was a lot, but that's me. But I also have like lots of games based on mathematical principles because that's what gets me excited. But I guess like that goes into another one of my lessons where like you should know yourself and your audience. Like whenever I design a game, I design it for me first. And then like once I get it working, then I have to think about like, okay, if I was a normal human, what kind of theme and stuff would they think about? Because like I could explain some of my games to other people, but like the connections I take are so vast. Like that's not a good product. No one but me is going to enjoy that, take on life or whatever. That's this game about puffins. Um, so like being able to acknowledge that and like then going to like, okay, what does this game actually need to be that won't just like give me joy? Like it's fine to like make games that give you joy, but like if you actually want a product that is successful, it has to give other people joy too.
Right. And that's another like I think was thinking about that more with my publisher brain of I design all kinds of stuff just for the joy of designing and the mental exercise and because I need it because I need to because it's in my brain and it needs to come out of my head. Very few of them actually get to publishing because then when I put on my publisher hat, I'm like, well, to actually publish this, I'd have to do this, and this to make it sellable. And I don't want to do that with this game. I like it for its weird little mental exercise that it was. So there are a lot of games that I make that will never probably ever see the light of day, and I'm okay with that. I don't obviously can't do that with every single game because we do have to publish games and then sell them because I also enjoy the apparently very overpriced, faintly fruit scented water and the roof over my head. So there's that part of it too, which is the less creative part of it. But yeah, what are you designing for is another important part of knowing yourself. Are you designing just for the joy of designing? Are you designing because you want other people to buy it? Is it somewhere in the middle? And getting the feedback of, can it be somewhere in between? Are you okay with like all those questions? You ask those questions every time you make something, I think.
Well, and like you can make a game just to find the joy of it, and that is a perfect reason to make it. Like, so not all the like I make a lot of games, and the ones that I get the like most joy from are those ones that are probably completely unpublishable for a variety of reasons. But I get the joy from there, and then that gets me like through the harder parts of the day for like all the other things, like the endless emails and customer service and stuff. Like it's okay because I made this little dinosaur game that is like from my heart that will probably never see the light of the day. Or
I
whatever.
loved your dinosaur game. I'm sorry, but it was great when I played it. Like it's been a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
okay, so that one It has been part of my heart for a long time, like 7 years or something. But one of the other lessons I've learned is that that game, people either loved it or they would flip the table, like literally flip the table. And so I put it on the shelf for a number of years. But then coming back to it, like that space, like I didn't touch it for like 3 or 4 years. Um, but when I came back, like the emotions were like further away, and I was like, oh yeah, this was a little game that I loved. How could I like change it to like avoid the table flips, because like that is a very stressful situation, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like if there's ever like a game that I have where it's like I love this, but like there's just something about it that I don't have the answers for right now. If I just take the time away from it, you can come back and be like, oh, right. I could just strip half the rules from this and it's like perfect now. Which could
And
be true.
you're not so close to it to be like, no, my precious.
Yeah, I was
I
so
love
precious about
you. Yeah.
all those rules where I was like, it's easy. People know what a rainbow is. It's in the sky. This is going to be easy. Like, okay, also nobody knows what a rainbow looks like apparently. It's fine. It's fine. Eventually I'll teach everyone what the colors of the rainbow are in the order. That's one of my goals, I guess. Um, but anyway, like I took out that rule where people needed to know what the rainbow is, and the game was exactly the same except without people flipping tables. Like who knew? You didn't
Who
need
knew?
any of that.
Who knew?
Um,
All right. So here's my next question. What major lessons would you say that you've learned um, from design, taking it to publishing? What have you learned from having to go from being a designer all the time to also being a publisher on top of that?
I think the major thing that I've learned is that I need to like focus and have like maybe one or two major goals with my games. Like I care about a lot of things. And I would love to care about, 50 things with each game. But like you physically cannot do that and also make a product that is sellable. For instance, like box size. Like I always try to make like the smallest box size possible and like just shove it with things. But like people like when customers are buying a game, they judge the box size based on the cost. And also like you can't shove any like expansions or anything in there. Um so like me being passionate about box size, like it did not support like my other goals of like having a successful company and caring about these other things. Like trying to support like all your goals is just going to lead you to like having a product that, what is it even? Is it too expensive? Will it be successful? But like really think about like at the end of the day, like what is it you want to do and how will your game support that, instead of, okay, I care about 30 things. Like, how are we going to do all of them? Well, you also need to sleep.
So kind of on the similar thread, one of the things that so I like doing a lot of logistics stuff. In our company, I do some design, some project management, um, but I manufacturing a lot of the manufacturing stuff, but it's not the creative part of working. So for me, it's finding what is creative about that. And so if you're going to do the publishing part of it, it's what do you find that's creative about that? So for me, I really get involved in the miniatures manufacturing. It's a 3D puzzle and looking at where the shape of things and how they look in the 3D art piece versus where it's going to be put in a mold and how it's going to line up and whether seams are going to be shown and everything like that is a three-dimensional geometric puzzle every time. And being able to to get a design from an artist or describe a design and tweak it so that when I hand it to a manufacturer and they can make it where it looks like it's all one piece, even though you know it's three different pieces that they've put together, type of thing. That's still a creative thing for me. That's what I am passionate about. Whatever it is, if I say find something, find what it is that makes you excited about the pieces of your job as a publisher that aren't necessarily as exciting. Maybe that is sustainability. Maybe that is having, planning the box sizes so you know if you're fully successful, they're all everything, all the expenses are going to fit in at the end. So you could be like, look, I had a vision for my 5-year plan of this game, like whatever it is. That's a also a fun thing that you can do that I think is creative and long-term rewarding when you're actually looking at spreadsheets that are not as exciting to look at.
Yeah, and
Because
like
they're not always exciting to look at. That's one thing. And then the big picture thing is if you know you want to spend your time focusing on designing games, make sure you're working with people who like doing the logistics piece of it, and don't necessarily have to like board games. I frankly, if you have a marketing person, like, yes, you're going to have to explain to them why certain things are going to work and not work compared to other businesses, but at the same time, you if you're if you don't like doing taxes, to find somebody who's going to be good at that isn't you. Like that's if you're like otherwise, it's just frustrating. It's just hitting your head over and over against the same wall of not doing what you want to be doing, which is designing, and you're not going to have the time all the time. That's a constant struggle, and we are at Van Ryder. We're a company of designers who all take on other pieces of of the job. So we have done a really good job of not everybody having to wear all the hats, but at the same time, we are all designers who have to wear certain hats. So whether it's localization, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's marketing, whether like we all design, but we also all do another part of it. Mine is mostly manufacturing and logistics, which I like. But if that's not your joy, and you want to publish your own games, find somebody who's going to be on board with you, who's willing to do the things, or at least divvy up the things that you're like, this is like taking out the trash. Like, find the person.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, one of my greatest decisions that I ever made was getting my friend Beth to help with customer service. Because, like, even though I'm fully capable of answering all these emails and stuff, having her do it is just amazing. Like, well, especially customer service, because like if it wasn't my babies that these people would be talking about, it would be a different thing. But I would sometimes just get very emotional, and it would just wreck my day to hear people like just making complaints or whatever. Like, even though the amount of like people that were happy is so much more, just getting rid of like the few minor complaints just made my life 100 times better. And like just having time to do other things, like just like even if you do have time to do everything, like maybe giving yourself time to like sleep extra or like just go on a walk or something. Like self-care is very important.
Oh yeah.
Like even if you don't think you need it, you probably need it. Like just having extra time and not like filling every single second of the day. That's actually like I try to make sure that I have like parts where I just go walking, because like that's when my brain just solves all the problems, whereas if I had just sat down and tried to solve the problems on my own, like my brain wouldn't come up with it because I'm just forcing it to think about like emails and logistics all day.
Yes, you have to refill your own reserves, your own creative well. The example that I had, okay, so we have a warehouse, and it's new and it's very exciting to have a warehouse and a team. And our warehouse team has given them each, like they each have taken a role of, so from Final Girl, one of the killers Uh, so when you get a game from us, it will have been packed by Hans the shipper instead of Hans the butcher, and it's the art of the monster, but instead of a sledgehammer, he's holding like a packing tape. Like it's and like they are all like they each have their own persona, so that when you get one of our games, you know who packed it, and they came up with it themselves. So when I say you can find creative things wherever, like if that's your joy, like everybody at our warehouse loves working at our warehouse. They enjoy it. I'm psyched about that because that's not what I want to do in life. But at the same time, I love that they also think it's super cool that what they are shipping is our games, and that's cool. Um, that makes me very happy. Um, for everybody involved.
I mean, and then you could just get so much happier. Like if your day goes like a little not so great, but you're working with people that are all really happy, like it just makes it better. Whereas like if they just like were okay with what they were doing, like they did it because they had to, like that's not gonna help you like bring up your mood at all. Like
No.
you need to really think of this as a marathon because like manufacturing a game and like getting a game from idea to like actually in somebody's hands, like that could take like 2 or 3 years, and that's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like something you could do in like 3 months or something.
And it's very different than design because design, especially if you're presenting it to a publisher, is usually not a complete and polished thing because you want it open ended enough that a publisher can tweak it to what they want. So that's a much shorter process typically, unless you're doing a massive, massive, you know, huge game with lots of story to line and giant boxes of stuff. Like those tend to take a little bit longer, but nonetheless, most games concepts to bring it to a certain point, you can iterate and get to in a couple of months or even shorter, depending on, well, I can think of some designers who are like, yeah, I do one a day. And I'm like, okay. That's impressive and terrifying to me. But at the same time, yes, there are designers who can be are a very quick turnaround. It's much longer to go through the entire manufacturing process, and there's not that instant gratification of I made a thing.
Well, like also if you're a designer and you're like are designing games, there's a difference between like getting it to like a pitch ready and then like starting to pitch it and doing that whole process, which
Mm-hmm.
can be like so long. Uh, and just like I've done that like a number of times, and just the whole like not knowing when something is going to happen or if it'll happen, like even after that contract is signed, like will you get the game back in like 2 or 3 years once the thing is over, because the pandemic happened and things changed,
Yep.
and so like publishers have to change with it. So like just managing all your emotions as a designer, and not putting all your eggs in the same basket and being like, oh yeah, this got signed, so it'll definitely be making
But
money.
going back to knowing yourself, when you're signing a game, knowing what your hard lines are and being okay with saying and walking away, which is hard, especially like if you haven't been published, it's really hard. It's really hard to walk away from a deal, even if you think it's a bad deal for you. I get that, but still, no, but no, know what your lines are. What are your hard stops? And if it's no, we own this game in perpetuity, whether we sell it or not. That's like what. Make sure there's like what is the exit clause on the game we're bringing back to you, and is that in the contract, and is it worded in a way that you are comfortable with, and is that a hard line or is that negotiable? Versus having your name on the box, versus the percentage, versus like there's a lots of different things you can negotiate in a contract. Know what you're willing to negotiate and what you're not, and know that about yourself, and be and that's and I and coming from the other side of obviously being published, I know it's easier for me to say I know that, but still you don't want to have that regret when you sign
And
something.
Well, and if you don't know your hard lines, because like when I started getting like my game signed, I didn't know like really what I wanted. It was just like, oh, cool, somebody's interested. Let's go for this. And also hearing from like other designer friends of like, oh, they signed a contract and this certain clause wasn't in there, like localization. Like if you don't have a localization clause, like a publisher can sell your game and get a lot of money, and you might get nothing from it. Um, so just ask lots of questions to like your fellow designers or publishers to make sure like that the contract that you get like is a good one. Like because like well, publishers are all just random people, and none of us went to publishing school because it doesn't exist. Um, so like I might have a contract and I give it to you and I think it's great, but like that doesn't mean that it is, even if I have good intentions and like you think you know the publisher, like and just getting more feedback on it, because I've seen like a lot of designers go through hardships when they realize that the contract is not the thing that they thought that they signed.
Right. Or be realistic about it. If you're new and you know it's not like, if you're new and you just really want to be signed, know that you're probably somewhat going to be taken advantage of, and make your peace with that for the next one, and be excited about the next game and be able to advocate for yourself a little bit more, because now you're a published author. Whatever it is, just know what you're. And if you're not, then don't. If you're not comfortable with any of that, then don't. I think any publisher is going to respect that you have boundaries, whether they like them or not, and also you'll know the companies that you want to work with for at least taking the time to talk through them with you.
So
yeah. So
well, on a different note with publishing, one thing I never thought that I'd learn, well, I'd hoped that I never learned, is that pirates can still ruin everything. Like,
please explain.
oh, you don't know? Okay,
Nope.
well, there's pirates, and they're attacking cargo ships.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that is happening right now. You haven't like done any freight lately in the last like 2 weeks, because freight prices have gone up, because like now they need to like put barbed wire on things and go different routes and stuff because pirates. And then the U.S. was like, let's deal with these pirates with bombs, and like those probably going to be fallout of that and stuff. But like, you can never know the future. And also freight prices are up.
I knew prices went up drastically. I didn't know pirates were involved for that reason.
Yeah, so like there's like a series of things that is happening, and it's probably there's going to be like a new thing that happens, like, oh, all the freight ships are going this new cargo route, and that's where whales are or something. Like, we'll learn what the new problem is after we have solved this, because freight and ships are never ending problems. Who knows?
Yeah, I know that we typically I know that prices went up very drastically overnight by several $1,000s. So I did know that, and we ended up having our next game, Revenant Society, is getting shipped to the West Coast, where typically, since we're based out of Tennessee, they get shipped to the East Coast. I didn't know that all of that was, I figured they were trying to find other routes to take for pricing reasons. I didn't know that it was pirates reasons. I'm going to be Googling that after. Pirates. Great.
Yeah, that was a terrible email I got where like I thought my freight was leaving, and then it's like, too bad, there's pirates, therefore changes.
There's pirates, therefore changes. Great.
But I guess like on that note too, one of the things I've learned in the past couple of years is just because something has worked in the past, it doesn't mean you should like keep doing it that way. Because like now that there's pirates and stuff, and we're shipping from China, like maybe I should look at the EU manufacturing again or something like that.
Constantly looking all over the world, constantly, and for so many reasons. And and talking to um, actually, I what's really frustrating is um, because it's so pricey still, to do stuff out of the United States. It's very hard, but like constantly going back to the any North American manufacturers, so mostly United States and Mexico, and never having like the right amount. They need print runs that are so much bigger than anything we do to make it worthwhile. But yes, it's constantly asking for that is always a challenge as well. And again, if you're a designer and none of this sounds fun, that tells you something.
Yeah.
And if this sounds exciting, I mean, we're talking about pirates. Pirates can be exciting.
Are so depressing.
Maybe publishing is for you. What oh. So, and then all right, so you make your game. You design a game, you make your game, and then you have to sell your game. What have you learned about retail, Carla?
Well, in the past, I always like kind of ignored retail because like the whole like having like 5 million things to do. But like in the last couple of years, I've really focused on it, and there's so like well, one, make spreadsheets because like I can't remember anything anymore. But try to deal with retail more than just at Gamma every year. Like retailers still exist outside the week of Gamma. Uh, where like if you are a person that has never been to Gamma, maybe you should try because like it is a great convention for meeting retailers. But just meeting the retailers there during that week and then ignoring them until like the next year when you're going to go to Gamma again is a bad idea because like they're humans and they care about relationships and stuff. Um, that was one of the big things because there's so much to do, but retail is very important.
Yes. So again, if that's not something you enjoy doing, there are plenty of people out there who like sales and enjoy doing sales and are good at it. And it's not even a one size fits all because there are the hard sellers who, high pressure sales types, and there's a place for them in this industry. But there's also, so at our company, Byron does our sales, and Byron likes to talk to people and make friends. And he knows every single one of our retailers. He can tell you about their lives and what games they like to play and what excites them, like what hobbies they do outside of board gaming. Like because he likes making friends. And so he talks to his friends and then eventually gets around to, okay, so what of our product do you still need? And they always order because they're talking to their friend. And that's a very different kind of sales and like a building relationships kind of thing, but that's what he does. And so there's place for all different kinds of sales, but you have to have somebody to do that if you're going to be selling things. And that's, again, it's important to have somebody who's excited about that. And again, be adaptable. This has been a very odd couple years.
Yeah, exactly. Like what used to work in the past doesn't always work, and you just need to try things and see what happens. Like
you have major companies jumping on Kickstarter. You have things that were never going to major chain stores now being picked, like going to Barnes & Noble. Final Girl is in Barnes & Noble. That's a big shift from, maybe you'd find Monopoly to what is available out there now in major stores. So there's a lot of dynamic in a lot of different ways, and staying on top of it, being able to pivot what you're selling to whom and how much and when is a lot to keep track of. And you could like Molly Zeff is a great example of somebody who's really good at talking to retailers. She is constantly talking to retailers. That's I think she likes going into stores. She also likes traveling all over the country. She is the most nomadic person I know. Because she just likes going from like into stores and talking to each retailer one on one. In a and I liked to travel, but I find like that to me that looks exhausting. But that she feeds off of it. That's so if that's something you like to do, obviously, if that gives you energy, that's great. But it is something that that you have to think about. Do you have the time to build those relationships? Do you have the energy? Are you an introvert? Do you, do you need to find an extrovert to help you? Um, to take care of those things because I am not an extrovert. So this is all the energy I'm going to have for the whole weekend. It's being on this. And I'm
Yeah,
going to go back to
exactly.
bed. So it's really good to have somebody who can do that. And at the end of the day, it's also about spreadsheets and being able to track how much product you have and where it's going and predict like and all of that. So it's it's like a worker placement sort of.
Well, sort of. So another thing that I've learned about retail is that I I will never find out all the reasons why something sells or doesn't sell. Just because like this industry is so weird. Like, well, I sell directly to people and at conventions, uh,
Mm-hmm.
directly to retailers and also to distribution, and also I work with consolidation.
Yep.
And maybe like well the other week like I had like an extra like 50 Wicked and Wise sell, and I was like, why did this happen? Like it was a lot
Did
more
somebody talk about it? Was it mentioned somewhere? Right.
but like being open to like go down that rabbit path of like, okay, like what could have changed,
Listen, by the
what
way, I'm so jealous that you have Wicked and Wise for Tessa's game is amazing.
yeah, she is amazing to work with too. um uh but anyway, yeah, like just you will never know why, like exactly why your game sells, because there's so many avenues and this industry is just so weird, and being able to acknowledge that like going in and interacting with the retailers is fantastic, even if you don't make any sales, because maybe they talk about your games to other retailers. Like there's such a word of mouth and people interaction thing that we're all doing that, you know,
Yeah.
why does one game do way better than another game? Well, like you can marketing and stuff works out, but like maybe one person was a super fan and brought it and made another super fan, and little things that you won't know, and that's okay.
I see Jay is in the comments. He said
Yeah,
hi.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
You worked on Wicked and Wise too. So
that's amazing. The bestest of people.
mhm.
Um, let's see what else. What have you learned about conventions? What are some lessons you've learned about going to conventions?
So in the past I just like had a convention schedule and I kept it the same every year because I thought that was simple. But now I am actually thinking about like whether I'm going to go back to each convention, like how often, etc. Because like you could go to every convention every year and then be exhausted, or like with Origins, I'm thinking about going every other year or every 3 years, just because the convention scene has changed. Like people have changed which conventions they're going to, the sizes. Like I think Origins has gotten smaller, or at least it feels smaller. And also I'm farther away from it, so it's more
It
expensive
hasn't,
to go
it's
to.
not back up to the numbers it was pre COVID. It has grown. It was about 2,000 short. So it hasn't grown as quickly back as some of the other conventions, looking at the numbers. So, yes, looking at that versus Gen Con, which is back with the vengeance, and PAX Unplugged was um, very full this past year. I agree.
And just like thinking about the money I spend there, I can maybe go to 2 or 3 smaller conventions and see how that does, and then go back to Origins next year. Or like whenever I have a new product or like enough new products and stuff like that. Like just looking back and knowing that every convention that was like a must go to might not always be a must go to.
Yeah. Um, I think being smart about that, knowing that every time you go to one, it's taking time away from whatever your routine is for the rest of the time. So, and like you crunch to get a design down to play testing for a show, or like whatever it is, you do so much work up to the show, and then you do the show, and then you're exhausted. So all that follow up that you want to do after the show, it's very unrealistic that you're going to get to that as quickly as you ever want to, because you're just wiped by the time you get back. So you're away from your desk the whole time you're at a convention, and then I need recovery time every time I go to one. So it takes me out of my routine, and so I have to make sure that I'm mindful of, is that setting a new routine? How do I minimize that? Um, like Avanel says she's not organized. She has systems in place. I try to do the same thing where I'm not necessarily organized during the show. I just have systems in place to minimize the damage, the carnage of of what's happened in my inbox when I get back to my desk after a show. Um, because for example, I'm getting emails from manufacturers and I'm at a convention, and if I don't make those decisions, then my dates are pushed back, and now I don't get the product that I was going to get before Chinese New Year, which is all factors that, if you're a publisher, is very important. If you're just designing, the hard part is crunching to get a design to a playtesting thing, or however are presenting. If you're going around and showing it your sell sheets and your deck, if you're trying to present to publishers, whatever it is, getting feedback and then doing all the follow-up afterwards is still exhausting. After spending all that energy of I'm on, I go back and I want to crash, and instead I have to do a lot of follow-up. So I try to have systems in place, and I practice a lot more self-care by saying no during a convention than I used to. I used to have
Yeah.
that "you'll sleep when you're dead" mentality, and now I'm like, no, I'll sleep when I'm tired. That's when I'm sleeping. I've stopped like the going hard, and I like, yes, also age is a factor. I'm not that young anymore, but also it didn't in the long run benefit me ever. The crash when it came was so hard and took me so much further away from all the things I was doing that I want to enjoy. That now it's, when people are like, you have to come, I have no problems being like, no, I don't. Like I want to, but I don't have to do all the things, and I'm going to prioritize certain things, and I'm going to forgive myself for not getting to all the things during a show.
Because, like, you can't get to all the things. You can't play a game with every human you love that goes to a con. Like, you
No.
physically can't.
And
Like,
for
another thing
everybody out there that I've not made it to a thing with you, I love you and I'm sorry. But yes, also, we just can't. As human
yeah.
beings, we can't.
Well, and like I think the pandemic made like everyone more tired and less able to deal with like as much noise and things like that. And just like figuring out like if you do want to go to a convention, how can you go to a convention and like also still take care of yourself? Like now, instead of being in the booth the whole time, where I used to love being in the booth for like 8 hours a day and being able to see all the people and interact and stuff. Now I'm very rarely at the booth, and I find myself a table that's like somewhat quiet, and then I just invite everyone to come to me, which it makes things so much easier. Like if I do this for another few years, like everyone will just know where my tables are, and it will require like so much less. Well, I'm also taking care of myself and making sure like I can get through the whole day, even if there's noise and screaming and all of that of the booth.
I did Lucas Oil Stadium at Gen Con last year, which is way far away. But it's still very, like, there's a lot of people and a lot of tables and everything. But because there's so much space, because you're on a football field, it doesn't feel I mean, it's wide. You've got the full stadium height, and everything is much more spread out. So it's not. It just didn't feel as much enclosed in. And I thought I was going to be really annoyed that I was so far away from everybody, and I really wasn't. And I really liked it. And you could like hear yourself think when you were playing. So this year, we have a second booth in Lucas Oil Stadium. So like we're gonna have like a set number of tables, and they were like, well, you can have it in the events hall right off of it, or you can stay in Lucas. And I chose Lucas Oil Stadium because like I'll have my team and people playing, and we'll have like a small booth where we can sell things there, the stuff that we're demoing or we're doing events for. But mostly, I'm just really excited to be somewhere where I don't feel like the convention center is following me home. I'm really excited about it. And everybody's like, oh, Lucas Oil, sorry. And I was like, yeah. And then I got there last year. I'm like, actually, I don't hate this. I think this is kind of nice.
Yeah, and like it might have less people, but like if you are like it just is better for you, like you'll probably do much better in the whole convention because like you won't be super tired in the convention hall. Like is that
so I say it was less people, but like none of our events were ever empty. Like people showed up with because if nobody's been to Gen Con, you can get tickets for specific events, but you can also get general tickets so that if and use those. And we were always full. We had people come up and use their general tickets. We had stuff signed up. Almost nobody blew off, like nobody signed up and then didn't show, kind of a thing. So our events were all very well attended, despite it being less people. There were still plenty of people. It just wasn't the throngs where you feel like a sardine, which was nice. It was nice. So that's my tip for all of you going to Gen Con is bizarrely go to the football stadium. If you're an introvert, you're going to love it. A shock to me as well. So where are we at? Are we on? Where? Yes.
I think we're over, or should we end it?
No, we're almost.
I don't know.
No, I think we're getting close to it though. So I don't know if we had any. I didn't see any extra questions. If anybody had any, my final takeaways for anybody who's listening, who like if you're going to go the publishing route, is if you're going to wear all the hats and design and publish, at least hire yourself a bookkeeper. Somebody who does it freelance is going to be very cost effective. They don't have to work for you full time. You can pay them, and the money you pay them is going to be worth every penny. They're really not that expensive for all of this time and stress they will save you for all of your business aspect stuff, taxes, all of that. A good bookkeeper will help you. Find yourself a bookkeeper. Make them, they don't have to be your friend. They just have to do the books and they will do it. It's totally worth it. And then my other thing was the ever controversial don't hire friends. If you hire a friend, they will not be your friend. They will be your colleague. And that changes the dynamic, especially if you are hiring them, then there's a power dynamic shift where you're the one in power. And if you can adjust that and they can adjust that, that is impressive. But most of the time and by most of the time, I mean every instance I can think of, it changes it. So hire colleagues, hire peers, hire people that you enjoy and respect, but don't do the we're all family or, I'm working it doesn't stay the same, and it can make things very hard in the long run for you and often become toxic, and none of that is good. Those are the two things for the publishing route, pieces of advice that I have learned the hard way.
And I definitely agree with that. Like, I have lost several friends because I thought it would be cool to work with them, and then it was not for different reasons. Um, I think like my last thing is just don't believe in the sunk cost fallacy. Where like just because you've spent so long on a certain design, it doesn't mean you have to keep with it. Just because the design helped you get to where you are, and maybe you can come up with a new game tomorrow that is like so much better. Like, not to say like your old designs aren't great, but like just because you've worked on something in a certain state for so long doesn't mean you can't like completely change it and make it into something great, or just put it on the shelf for like 3 years until you can get
And
over
come
your
back to
emotions.
it, right?
Yeah, and be
And
like,
then what was the most recent lesson we've learned, like this week or this month?
I mean, for me it was the pirates, because I was like, what? I have to pay for
Pirates are
pirates
big.
right now?
Yeah.
Like, well, especially my bill, where I was like, what? I thought we had agreed on a bill for this boat, and nope. I guess that's
Yep.
another lesson, is like you could think that you know the price of a boat, but until you know the price of a boat.
You don't know the price of a boat. Yeah. This, I mean, I had the flu this week, so I didn't really learn anything. I learned that my team has also been very supportive, but I already knew that too. Um,
Maybe self-care or something? Take time off?
yeah, no. Masking is real, friends. Continue to mask.
Yeah, no one wants to have
Nobody wants to.
water.
I was wearing a mask. Nobody else was. I got sick still. Continue to wear the masks. That was a lesson that I keep learning the hard way, and it's not fun. But a lesson that everybody needs to keep doing. Um, that's that that and actually no, I do have one. So while I won't hire friends for my company, bringing on friends and having a diverse group of people from all walks of life as friends and colleagues and peers that I can call upon, um, and asking them for help is invaluable. So I am doing something, and it's my team has somebody who's in education, somebody who's a psychologist. Like I have a wide spread of industries represented, and the conversation we had about board games from people coming from different walks of life was just fantastic. Like in 30 minutes, I got such a much better perspective around games because wasn't just talking in an echo chamber with other industry people. That was super helpful. So, don't be afraid to talk to people that you wouldn't think to normally talk about to get feedback, because that can also be very helpful. That's what I learned this week.
Well, thanks to everyone who watched it and said things and everything. I'm Carla Kopp, and this is Julie.
Bye, everybody.